Hello, everyone. It's Irene here. Welcome to this special topic lecture of December 2021. Today, I'm going to be doing a year in review. So nothing new per se. I have some notes from all of the special topic lectures that I did in 2021. I think I'm going to start from January of 2021 and go through to November. Before I get started, just wanting to say hello to all of you. I know there are many new folks here. If you're new to my channel, let me know. If you've been around for a while, let me know. Use the chat feature that we have here. I will do my best to take questions that are relevant, of course, to the topics I'm talking about. If you are new here, I'm obviously Irene Lyon, and in addition to this YouTube channel that has lots of videos, we're definitely over 100 videos, vlogs, these lectures, Q&As. There's lots of testimony from our students who have gone through this work and have done it firsthand. In addition to this channel, I also run courses and programs and online classes, and we have free ebooks and audio samplers and video trainings and so much that I will mention little bits throughout today's review. But if you haven't yet gone to my website, please do that. Bookmark it. It's just my name, irenelyon.com. We'll pop it in the chat, but we'll also pop it in the resource section because many of you might be watching this after we go live. All right, so I think we're all looking good here. Got everything here. I'm just going to see who is in the chat. Let's see here. Hey there, John, one of our alum. Hey, Elizabeth. Yes, you've been around for a while. Another one of our alum, another alum. Lots of alum here today. Hello from Norway. And yes, so Elizabeth, this will be your fourth SBSM coming up, Smart Body, Smart Mind. So I'll definitely mention my courses and programs today. If you've done them, let me know. Tell people your experience. If you haven't, I encourage you to check out my 21-day nervous system tune-up and also the yearly program we run, not year-long, but it runs once a year coming up in March, which is Smart Body, Smart Mind. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm going to go through the lectures from 2021. I'm going to share a takeaway, some practical pieces, but what I also want to really share are some of the comments that I went in and mined. And some of these comments are very good as standalone takeaways, but also I'll answer the questions if there was a question in the comment. So let's get started. All right. Let's get going. And Diana is my helper. She's putting links in as I speak. So thanks, Diana, for hanging and doing that as well. All right. So January 2021, my special topic lecture was titled Sovereign Source Energy. I'll say that one more time. Sovereign Source Energy. And sovereign basically means super, it means above, it means power, reign. It comes from the French souverain, so supreme power. And in the context of human biology and the nervous system, it really means getting to this place where we have full vitality, full, what I like to say, life force energy. I learned that term from Peter Levine, the founder of Somatic Experiencing. And some of the notes that I have here is, one of them is it really does boil down to our ability to express healthy aggression, healthy anger. This is not violence and hate and being harmful to others. It's being able to feel our own instincts, our survival instincts, and move them up and out so that they're not trapped inside. So working with Anger and healthy aggression is part of this sovereign source energy and attaining it. And it sounds easier said than done, and it's not, especially if we have grown up in a world of abuse, adversity, we've been shut down, we've been conditioned. It can feel really strange to consider how or why healthy anger exists, how there can be such thing as anger that is healthy. I have done many resources. We actually have an entire playlist here on this channel, all on, I like to say, anger as medicine. Because if you think about it, anger is one of our key primary mammalian emotions. It does so much for us, and it keeps flow going in our body. It's one of the things. And so because of many of us have grown up with anger that is abusive, anger that is toxic, rage, violence, we may only think that that's the kind that exists, when really, if you think about my classic example, I always go to the bears. I think of mama bear, grizzly bear, polar bear, black bear, brown bear, panda bear, whatever kind of bear you want to imagine. When they have their cubs, they're young, and you try to do something to those cubs, I mean, you can even see it and hear it and feel it in your body when I say that. There is a visceral reaction that is survival based that comes from that mammal, that mother, to protect her young. That is life force energy. That is healthy aggression and anger. And that is, and we don't really think of animals as sovereign, but that is their healthy life force energy. So us humans, we have it too. Let's go into my notes because I don't want to leave anything out. The other thing with sovereign source energy is knowing what's good for us and acting on it. Knowing what's good for us and acting on it. I'm going to say that one more time because it's really important. Knowing what's good for us and acting on it or upon it, following through, taking action as opposed to reaction. One of the things that's tricky when we know we are still at this beginning stages of healing our traumas and nervous systems is we might not know how to discern what is accurate for us. And so things might be a little confusing. And part of this work, and I'll kind of be like a broken record repeating the same things over and over again, is getting to know your physiology, your nervous system, learning what it is, learning how to express all of the emotions, the whole spectrum of them. But this ability to know what is right for us, it's possible for some of us, we never, ever had a chance, even from day one. The moment we were taken, I'll just speak once we're born, because of course there's in utero experiences and transgenerational experiences, so of our ancestry. But if we think about it, when we come out of mother, if we were brought into a hospital setting, a setting that doesn't understand the importance of baby getting to mother, of course, granted, baby doesn't need medical attention, right? That first spark of connection was our first birthright, to be with her, to have her hold us, to suckle, to nurse, to see her eyes, for us to see his eyes. If we didn't get that, we start off, I think you might be seeing where I'm going here. We start off without knowing what is truly ours and what we are deserving of. And so fast forward to being in your 40s, 30s, 60s, 70s, into your late teens, whatever it might be, if we have never really stopped to feel us and our internal sense, we may have inaccurate, I'm going to say that again, we may have an inaccurate knowledge as to what we want for ourselves. So unpacking this is healing. It takes time. It's not something that necessarily is going to happen in the blink of an eye. I'm going to read a comment here that was under this video. So this person writes, wanted to add a note about the caregiver being accidentally hurt by the child. So this is in relation to anger. One of the things you'll learn if you go deeper into my anger and healthy aggression videos and resources, it goes back to the baby. When the baby is a little older and can pull on mother's hair or scratch or hit, that's their expression of their energy and power. They're feeling their muscles. They're exerting force because they're finding it. And it's really exciting for them, even though they have no idea what's going on. They're feeling an energy. They're feeling sympathetic activation. They have these little hands. Here's this person. I'm going to act out what my body wants. So this person is referring to that. So she, he, I'm not sure who they are. I didn't add a name. They wanted to know about the caregiver being accidentally hurt by the child. For example, when an infant scratches or pulls the caregiver's hair. And you said the caregiver needs to understand it is not on purpose and not reprimand the child. This all makes perfect sense. And in theory, it's all well and good. But you know, often in the reality of parenting, it is not cognitive like this. We don't always react because of what we think the intention of the child is. We can know completely that the child doesn't mean to hurt 100% and is trying to express 100%, but we ourselves as parents can feel re-stimulated, this is the important part, into our own hurt and vulnerability, and we respond with anger not to try to correct the child, but simply through an unconscious trigger, 100%. Even in a calm moment, we understand all of it and don't want to react with anger when we are physically harmed. How can we overcome this type of reactivity? So what they're basically saying is they may know intellectually that the child isn't trying to hurt them, which is accurate. A 6-month-old is not being vindictive and malicious and trying to hurt their parent. They're just expressing their energy. Parent who may not have healed their wounds feels this as an attack. They feel as though this little one is a little monster, but they know cognitively that that's not accurate. But viscerally, they're triggered, and the trigger is there because of unhealed trauma of their own. So the answer to this question, how do we overcome this type of reactivity? We have to learn to regulate our nervous system and work with that internal feeling of anger that might bubble up and wanting to harm the child, not by harming them, but by establishing that quality, that feeling when you're on your own, when you're not with the child, and you work on that. You work on that somatic experience. Maybe you work with a practitioner. Maybe you get into my courses and programs and you learn how to be with that intensity inside instead of just acting, reacting, screaming, putting the kid down and ignoring them. So it all comes down to really growing this capacity to be with those somatic experiences and know what they are and know that they're there for a reason. So I hope that was clear. So just to wrap up this idea of sovereign source energy, then I'm going to go into the comments here on YouTube. Sort of practical piece is really starting to differentiate between me and you, or me and them, or me and this is the external world. And what is okay, what is not okay. The other part of this is boundaries. And this isn't okay for me. It might be okay for you, but it's not okay for me. And I'm standing strong in my sovereign source energy. You are not going to shift my beliefs, feelings, my internal interoceptive knowledge that this is for me. And it's staying strong in that and not wavering. So it's getting out of what we would call group think, more tribalistic actions and behaviors, society, what others want you to be, who they think you are, and really standing strong in your ground. And to do this, we really have to work with our somatic experiences in this internal world. And then, of course, if there's memories and past hurts and all those things that come up with it, work with those. All right, I'm going to move this over so I can see your comments. Hello to everyone. So Kathleen asks, you've mentioned that depression is a shutting down of the fight-flight energy. Yeah, that's correct. It is a stamping out, a suppression of this life force energy that I've been talking about, really our spark, our internal energy, our chi, if you even want to use some Eastern traditional language. And then anxiety, as you say, is an abundance of fight-flight energy. Yes. So survival energy, I think of it more in terms of the designations of the nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system, it helps us fight and it helps us flee. There is more of an energy, an adrenalized nature to it. However, we need a little bit of sympathetic activation that's healthy to get us up in the morning, to allow us to walk the dog, to carry the groceries, to do this with you, even though I'm here and I'm using my higher brain, and even though I can't see any of you, I'm imagining that you guys are there. There's a social engagement, but I have a little bit of sympathetic energy, but I'm not anxious. I'm not in survival stress. And so part of this work is being able to tease apart what is true fear, maybe in the moment because there's something bad happening, what is perceived fear that is stored in the body, the old survival patterns, and then what is maybe just an increase in heart rate and an increase in activation and stimulation, but it's not fear. It's just the physiology needing to get the heart rate up to go up a flight of stairs. I hope that makes sense. I did a video a little while ago on exercise and trauma, and it explains in that why a lot of people avoid high intensity anything, because when they feel their heart go up and they feel that blood pressure response at that sympathetic level, it reminds them of the survival stress, of the fight flight. And this is why I think a lot of people, perhaps unconsciously, do not take care of their bodies. They just don't like that feeling of intensity. But if we can break through and understand that they're different, that's when you start to make headway with health and healing. Yeah, someone said, a therapist once asked me, what makes you angry? And you say, I don't feel anger. I wasn't allowed to be angry as a child. Yeah, this is a very, very common thing. I would say it's more common than not allowing children to be sad and grieve and cry. It's just not typically expressed in our more Western, Commonwealth, civilized, I say that with air quotes, society where you have to button it all up and not look like a savage beast. I'm not saying that we should go out and hurt others and people, but we have that in us and we really need to cultivate it. If we didn't get this spark, how do we generate it for ourselves as adults? Do the work, get into the work, whether it's with my programs, which is why I've developed them. We work towards cultivating the capacity and the foundation to be able to express our healthy aggression. My students who are here could probably back me up on that and make a few comments and I can read them out. But it's very important for us to cultivate first foundation and capacity, and then the anger and the healthy aggression starts to naturally bubble up. It really is not something that can be done just with general talk therapy from my experience. It needs to bring in the somatic piece, the nervous system piece, and a few other pieces that I'll get into. All right, going to get to the next one. Let's tick that off so I know that I've covered it. So January is done. February. So the lecture I did in February was all things polyvagal. So if polyvagal is an unfamiliar term to you, basically poly is many, vagal means the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve is a very big portion of our autonomic nervous system, specifically our parasympathetic nervous system. So the parasympathetic nervous system is huge, And vagus nerve means wandering nerve. It goes into all sorts of parts of the body, ear, facial area. It connects to muscles that innervate or nerves that innervate the face, the pharynx, the larynx, the voice. It allows us to modulate our voice. There's a question or a comment I'll read in a little bit about that. It goes to the heart. It goes to the gut, all of the organs. So it's very important. And the key thing to understand about this vagus nerve and this polyvagal concept, it's called a theory, and also the branches of this vagus, is that A, it is very complex, and B, the vagus nerve, the polyvagal world, the parasympathetic nervous system, its job is to slow things down, not calm things down. And this is a distinction that I really want to hit home, because a lot of top level scientists I hear still say parasympathetic system is rest digest. The parasympathetic is calms you. That's partially true. And so, quick little science lesson. I have obviously this lecture, so please watch that if you want a deeper dive into it. But we have two branches to this parasympathetic nervous system. One is called the ventral, one is called the dorsal. The ventral allows me to speak, to see, to engage with the world. It lets me do funny faces and all sorts of things. And you might see my face and go, what the heck is she doing? It's also when I have a baby and I look and I make facial expression and I smile, or I get surprised. You know, if you play with a kid hide and go seek, you can do these things with your face, and they, hopefully, if they're healthy, they'll see you, they'll mimic it, they'll laugh, they'll hide. It's about engaging and having cues with other mammals, also our cats, our dogs, etc. That's the ventral portion of the vagus nerve. The dorsal portion governs this slowing down. But there's two portions to the dorsal. One is called high tone, the other is called low tone. High tone is an abrupt slowing down. It is the shutdown. It is the freeze response. It is the eventual collapse and defeat, and I can't fight anymore. This will come important into when we get into sexual trauma healing and the nervous system. So the dorsal slows down, but in a very abrupt, clunky, quick way. If I cut my arm and I'm spurting out blood from my artery, I'm going to want my system to go into high tone dorsal shutdown so that everything slows down. Blood pressure slows down, heart rate slows down, all these sorts of things. Same if we're attacked. If we can't fight, we can't flee, we're going to want to go into that preservation mode, hibernation mode, if you will. The low tone of the dorsal is the true rest digest. So that is more calming. That's the post eating a grilled cheese sandwich and you're having just a nice cozy time and you just feel yourself kind of go into this lull and you want to take a nap. That's the system going into this low tone dorsal. So we need all of them, but we want them to turn on at the right time. For many people who are still living in a state of dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system, their dorsal, high tone dorsal, the shutdown, freeze, collapse runs the front of their bus, runs the show of the autonomic nervous system. And when that occurs, you don't get to go into the really good, yummy rest digest that repairs the system. You also don't go into that ventral that socially engages. This is why if you see folks who are, let's just say, very, very unwell, we could say psychopath, sociopath, people who are super damaged and they do really terrible things to others, there will be an affect to them that is pretty much blank. There's very little facial affect. There is this monotone quality to them. They hear something, they don't even raise an eye, they don't even lighten up, they don't even look scared. There is just this chronic shutdown collapse, this high tone dorsal. So we need them, but we also need them to work at the right time in the right place. part of this work and learning how to regulate the nervous system is understanding the complexity of this vagus nerve, but also working with it and understanding where we might be in that spectrum of the vagus nerve, of the polyvagal theory. All right, I'm going to go back to my notes here so I don't lose track. This was a comment, which was a bit of a question. So I'm going to read the question comment. So how does someone begin to intentionally look for cues of safety, particularly from other people, when they have a history of over-focusing on cues of danger or misinterpreting natural cues in the environment? In other words, what cues of safety could a person look for to facilitate greater regulation? So this is where it does get tricky, because if the humans in our life were our source of danger, it doesn't make sense to go find another human and try to fix those miscues of unsafety. One of the classic things that we work with my students is teaching them how to orient to the environment, not necessarily to people, to the sky, to the trees, to the warm cup of tea and feeling it. That feels good on my hands because it's a little cold in here. Orienting to music, sounds, smells, maybe some more tactile touch that's less orienting, that's more sensory stimulation. So one of the ways that we can build these safety cues is to actually orient to this environment of ours, obviously in an environment that is safer and isn't, a war-torn zone where there's all sorts of crazy stuff going on, something that is resourcing for you, something that is calming for you, or can instigate that sense of that low tone dorsal, or again, that ventral I mentioned a second ago, engaging with others. It might be that you do have someone that is safer in your world, or maybe there's a show that you really love and you watch their faces and then you feel in your body how seeing that friendly, funny, comical smile impacts you inside. I think this is one reason why so many of us love like crazy animal videos, watching kittens and puppies, and there's all these wildlife channels where animals are just chilling and they're playing in the water and those sorts of things. So those are some ways that we can actually start to feel those cues inside without engaging with another human being. So that's one little tidbit there. And then the other way that we can interact with and start to build up these cues of safety, this ventral vagal, one little bit, that ventral of the parasympathetic nervous system of the vagus, it goes right to the heart. It goes to what's called the pacemaker, the SA node of the heart. And so when we spark up good, positive ventral vagal with a person, with the environment, we actually calm the heart. The heart will soothe and slow down in a good way, not in the way if we're in shock and it just drops. Hope that makes sense. So again, if you don't have people in your world that are safe, can you go for a walk to a park? Can you just, you don't even have to say hello, nod, smile. Of course, granted, the people around you want to do that. Don't force someone on the street to smile to you. But you can usually tell when you're walking in a park or a grocery store if someone is open to saying hello, nice weather, what a nice day, what kind of tomato sauce are you getting? Have you had this before? Those sorts of things. I know it sounds silly, but those little bits of small talk can actually help us build social engagement. And, other things I had here, act out. In other words, I don't mean act out. Let's just say you want to do an experiment. Go to the grocery store and say to someone, hey, can you help me find something? Right? And maybe you are looking for something, but rather than looking for the aisle and the number, you're like, I'm going to try talking to one of the store clerks, right? Where do I find peanut butter? Where do I find whatever? Usually those people in the stores are very happy to help because they actually probably want to engage with people rather than just stocking shelves. Usually they'll walk you to exactly where you need to go and they will help you find it. That is one little experiment, one little trick to bring a little bit of social engagement into your world with someone who you don't have to take home with you. They're doing their job, and you're just asking a question. So fun little one that you can try. Okay, let's go into the comments here. I'm just going to go to the questions that deal with what we were talking about. I'm in the process to feel myself, but I do not know what I have to feel. Is it the defense mechanisms you have to feel, or is it the pain below that? How can you come by the real pain? It really just starts by starting the work, Anya. It starts by, because you're right. If you are brand new to this and there's a lot of stored stuff, defense mechanisms, pain, it's going to be like this ball of yarn that you just can't untie. And so we have to start in my work with the education, which you're learning here now, parts of it, but deeper education, which I teach in my courses, and then doing very specific, I call them neurosensory exercises that help you re-engage with your somatic experience, with your internal body, but also with this external world that I was just talking about, this orienting process. It's pretty hard when we're very, very new and raw to this work to just try to figure out what our defense mechanisms are. We might know what they are based on the outcome afterwards, but often it's like a Tesla. They go from 0 to like 110 in 4 seconds or even faster. And before we even know how to find it, we're already in a state of shock or terror or panic or pain. And so part of this work is slowing things down. I'm going to get into titration soon, slowing things down enough so that we can start to pull apart parts of that ball of yarn that's just completely jammed and tight and looks like nothing but just this big ball. So the pain, of course, may be below that, but it might be, we don't know. And this is the thing, we just don't know what might come up and out depending on our system and our physiology. I'll get into this in a little bit. Okay. The next one. So this was February. So March I did a lecture called Healing Gone Bad. And I have healing in air quotes. So healing gone bad. And I titled this because I'm going to go out on a limb here. A lot of times we think we're doing healing practices, and maybe for some people they work, but when we have a history of adversity, stored survival stress, a lot of abuse, a lot of trauma, a lot of unsafety, the practices, the healing practices that we go into are just too advanced. They're too high level to begin with. Doesn't mean they're not good. I speak to things like meditation retreats, big cathartic expressions. Plant medicine has become really, really popular lately. I'm going to talk about some of this. Breath work even can be too stimulating for some of us, but we do it because we're told it's supposed to be good. But if we don't have the language in our physiology and in our, it's called introception, this capacity to connect with our internal environment and know when enough is enough. This goes back to that sovereign element at the beginning that I was talking about. If we don't have the ability to track when our body has had enough, or if something doesn't feel good and we're just going in it because we want to heal like yesterday, we're going to jump over really important cues from our body that are telling us that's enough. Stop, pause, call it for a day, go watch a funny movie. That's it. A lot of this work is actually about knowing when to stop, knowing when to pause, to take a break, to process, to integrate. The other thing I talked about in this Healing Gone Bad lecture is the importance of understanding somatic bypass. Kind of already alluded to that, but we often know the term spiritual bypass, which is where a person is really seeking healing and enlightenment, and they just go to the stars, they go to the spirit, they go to the higher level energies, to the multidimensionality of the universe, which to me exists and is real, but it's very big energy. It's very expansive, it's very opening, but it bypasses the stuff here in this physical body of ours that is, some people call it our meat suit, the cells, the history, the memories. And of course, we want to bypass this stuff because it can be really, really terrifying and scary to consider going into the history that's stored in our somatic physiology. The thing is that if we bypass into that spirit other realm world, this body is going to continually shout at us. It will break down. It will get sick. So we have to be with the body, not bypass it, but also know how to titrate. I'm going to read this comment. This person said, yes, I started meditating when I began to wake up to the world of thoughts, feelings, and how they affect our experience. The knowledge woke me up, but the meditation led to dissociation. It led to several meltdowns when I couldn't manifest what I wanted in life. That's when I began to pray, and I was led to somatic therapy. And wow, it was real awakening for me, in my opinion. My body was shaking like crazy when I just had my initial consultation with my therapist. So it sounds like this person worked with a somatic practitioner. And I was just so fearful of opening up to anyone. My nervous system was on fire. I'm still healing, but I'm happy because I have progressed so much. I'm a dancer by nature, and getting back into dance has been important for me too. I came across Irene's content for the first time about 2 years ago, but I just wasn't ready to hear it. I'm so grateful for your work, Irene. Thank you. You are welcome. This is a really important point. Not everybody is ready to hear this stuff. I would like to say that if you're here watching this, you are ready to hear it and you're ready to do the work. But this is another point that's very important. We never want to force anyone to do this work, because it is work getting into this old stuff and really being responsible with what we unpack. So that was just a lovely, lovely comment. My general advice with all of this, take things slow, be okay without a quick fix. I'm going to say that again. Be okay without the quick fix. And really slow and steady wins the race, if there is even a race to win. We really want to honor the body's physiology, because it was never honored. Typically, I'm being very general here, but for most of us, we never honored our physiology when we were younger. I know I sure as hell didn't. And I'm still working on a lot of the injuries and traumas that I never dealt with as a kid, as a teenager, as a woman in my 20s, who was very, very into sport and intense activities, adrenaline activities. All right. Okay, question here. Someone asks, Irene, do you think feeling the pain and tears can become addicting or reinforce feeling inadequate? It definitely can. So we can become addicted to our suffering. We can become addicted to being sick. If our family, for example, this is an example, only knows us as unwell, depressed, never speaks up, never shows exuberance and health and vitality, and we get attention and care from them in that state, there is a very strong part of that physiology that's like, well, why should I change this? If I change this, they might disconnect from me. There's something called a Fawn response. There's fight, flight, freeze, and then some people will say Fawn, which is more of a appeasement. It's a much more advanced trait. It's not really an autonomic nervous system trait, in my opinion. It is more advanced. But one way that we fawn when we are in environments that are very, very toxic is a kid will not necessarily become anxious or stressed. They'll just get an illness. They'll become sickly. Their nervous system and its dysregulation won't show up as anxiety or depression. It'll show up as multiple chemical sensitivities or migraine headaches or severe fatigue, digestive problems, all the things that connect to a dysregulated nervous system. Ina says, how can we express fear through a punch bag or twisting a towel, but fear? So I've done some stuff on using devices like a towel, like a pillow on my anger as medicine videos. So definitely check those out. Fear sometimes is just doesn't involve fighting. It doesn't involve fleeing. It involves feeling intensity. The key with working with fear is feeling the fear, but not being afraid of it. That's the key with fear. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one, April. So in April, I did a talk called How is Trauma Really Released? How is trauma really released? It was probably the most commented on lecture that I've ever done. There was 186 comments. Of course, those are also replies to comments. Watch that one. If you aren't sure which one to watch, start with that one because it was a really important one. The main takeaways from this one, and the reason I titled it How is Trauma Really Released, is we've romanticized healing trauma to just be shaking or getting through a box of Kleenex or I can't even think of them right now because we have this idea in our mind that that's what it's supposed to be like. However, there's no one size fits all. All of our things are very different. There'll be some themes, if we were held down as a kid, whether for a surgery or an attack, or we were in an incubator growing up, there will be flight energy indicative of breaking our hands free and trying to run, those sorts of things. So there are instances where you can say, yes, usually when there is this kind of a traumatic experience, typically it's more shock-based, but it can also be early in developmental trauma. We will see these memories come out through these movements. They're called procedural memories, but not always the case. And sometimes getting to that requires quite a few steps of capacity building, which my first key takeaway around releasing trauma is building capacity, building this ability to feel in our bodies what is going on. I call it really the 1, 2, 3s, the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of the nervous system. I did a video, over 2 years ago now, comparing, using an analogy of learning a language, a second language as an adult. So if you can imagine how difficult that might be if you've never learned another language. Learning a second language as an adult, to me, is the equivalent to learning how to regulate and grow capacity in our nervous system when we didn't get it in the first 5 years of our life. It can totally happen. If you're sitting here watching me, you can read, you can process words, you can speak, you can feed yourself, you have shelter, basic needs of human function. If you have all these things, you can do this. You can relearn or learn maybe for the first time how to build regulation in your nervous system. When we start to do that, that is when these traumas start to express and release and integrate. So my take is, because of how I work online with people now, I'm not working with people one-on-one. I was working with people one-on-one, and I used to do that quite a bit. I might work on a specific trauma and work on finding the entry points so that they can have the capacity to release whatever it is that they're working on. But in this forum, and the way we've worked with our students, and we've got people from over 90 countries that have gone through our programs, so lots of people, I can't be with you guys one-on-one. My team can't be with you one-on-one. So what we teach you is, I like to say, the algorithm. We teach you the principles. We teach you the variables. We teach you the groundwork, the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s, the language to build capacity and foundation. And as that gets built internally, and as you get the knowledge on board, as I touch my head, the higher brain understanding of the complexity, you then can use your higher brain to say, oh, there's this thing happening to my body, and I think it's this trauma releasing. I think that's what is happening. I'm going to do these things that I've been taught and let this play its course, let this move through. One of the comments that was on this video, how is trauma really released? One was, in some videos you mentioned that we really shouldn't confront people who hurt us, but then sometimes healing trauma means to speak up and say something. You are correct. This person was correct. How do we know when it is best to speak up? Practice. Practice, practice, practice. Learning to be better with something called neuroception, which comes on board as we get healthier in our nervous system. It is the perception of safety or danger. So remember my example a little while ago about going to a grocery store and asking someone who's stocking shelves where to find the peanut butter? If you walk up to that person and you don't feel, just something feels not right, not because of your history, but maybe just something, you just don't, something feels off, just keep walking, find another person. So this is another way that you can also start to discern and use your spidey senses, right? And listen to that internal physiology that's saying, don't ask this person, ask this person. One way that we can practice this is going to sound a little different, but if you are someone who, say, walks through a city or outside and you have a pattern that you always do to get to a certain spot, see what it's like to follow your impulse, to see if there's a different pattern that you want to do. Is there a different route that you might want to take? You know, when you cook dinner, if you're always starting with this type of preparation, what would it be like to start making this first, right? Try to just feel how you might be ingrained in certain patterns, but then see how you can break them in a way, of course, that is safe and not harmful to you. And listen to the impulse. When you get up in the morning, do you automatically do something because that's just how you were taught to get up in the morning, or would you rather do something else? So there's these ways that we can start to remember. This question was, how do we know when speaking up is safe versus not? You have to practice, you have to trial and error, and you practice with other things in your life, not necessarily speaking up to a person. It can be these other sort of parallel experiences where you're trying to feel, this is a pattern that I'm really good at. What happens if I do this? One of the classes I did, gosh, I think it was in this November. It was my last drop-in class. I think Diana will be able to put it up. I did more intentional movement, but it was about tuning in. It's very hard to describe it. You have to experience it. But it was about feeling how you engage in movement. So if I were to say right now, imagine what it would be like to bend down and tie up your shoes. So just try that. Just feel it. Imagine it. Don't do it. Even though I've said imagine it, there's probably a large percentage of you that just went to do that. So if you come back and you sense again, just feeling, if you were to tie up your shoe, you will probably feel the direction that you go to first. It might be the right, it might be the left. Typically, it's one of the two. So that is a very ingrained sensory motor pattern in your body. Doesn't mean one side is better than the other, but what you can start to do with your actions is slow them down and feel them and be like, okay, it's definitely, I can't even feel myself. I will go to my right. Well, what would it be like to go to the left? How do I have to use my body differently? How do I have to change my shoulders, my pelvis, my ribs, my eyes to go to the other side first? For those of you new to me, you might be like, what the heck does this have to do with releasing trauma? It has everything to do with it, because the trauma lives in the physiology, in the patterns of our movement, our structure, all these things. And so part of my work is more than just working with the emotions and the fight flight responses. It's also bringing in this element of movement. And the class from December 2021 was a really good way to practice and experience that and get a feel for this level of sensory motor complexity. Okay, that was a very long way to answer that question. Gonna go to the next one, which was in May. So in May, I kept it quite simple in May. It was nervous system starter steps. Nervous system starter steps. That's a tongue twister, that one. And really, the biggest takeaway for this one is to just start. I did a video a week or two ago, the 7 habits for successful nervous system regulation. I need some water. Ooh, talking. Did a video, 7 habits for successful regulation of the nervous system. Number 1 is to start immediately. The reason I say that is because there is often a fear, which is very valid, to beginning this work. So if you can break out of that habit of saying, excuse me, I'll do it next week, I'll do it next year, I'll do it when I have more time. Try to break out of that habit if that is one of your habits. Some people don't have that habit, but I see it a lot. So just start with my resources. If you're here, you've started already. Start with practical. Start with my audio samplers. All right. I waited too long to drink. Just going to pause and give my throat a little moment. I'm going to read some of these comments. Someone said in response to my last lecture that I was reviewing, my family only gives me attention when I'm sick. Yeah, so they have limited contact with me now that I'm successful and working. Yeah. Yeah, families are weird. They're weird. Hey there, Jairus, you said, you don't know how much you've helped me. I'm so glad and grateful for your work, and I can't wait to join SBSM. Awesome. I'm going to leave that question for a moment. Yeah, someone said, I'm guilty of that, of postponing and delaying out of fear. Yeah, and this is the trouble, John. You just wrote that comment there. It's synonymous to someone saying, I'll start the work when I feel more safe. The trouble is, if our safety was disrupted really early in life, that isn't going to happen until we start doing the somatic work. So part of sometimes doing this work is accepting I'm going to feel a little terrified doing this, and I'm just going to do a little bit to begin with. Titration is key, and I'll get into that in a second. Okay. I'm going to read a comment from the nervous system starter steps. This is a good one. Irene, is it safe to assume that most people are dealing with unhealed trauma in our world? From my experience, 100%. I haven't met anybody that hasn't or isn't. Seems like even if you are blessed with a stellar development, the society and schooling system would add complexities to that layer. Just curious. Yep. Yep. I would say that our societal systems are the way that we socialize, such an interesting word, our kiddos is detrimental. Doesn't mean that children shouldn't be learning right from wrong. Doesn't mean that a child shouldn't learn routine and chores and contributing to the household and these sorts of things. But when it comes at the price of not teaching them how to also be in their emotions and express themselves, then we have a problem. And this has been basically the entire Industrial Revolution, which was a long time ago. And even before that, when we started to domesticate plants and animals, that's when we started to domesticate ourselves. We weren't the nomadic beings that we used to be. And so just even that in itself shifts how our physiology wants to be free and roam, etc. This is a fun one. No real question here. But someone said on this one, I hear tones during your presentation. Do you have subliminal messaging going on? Not that I'm aware of, but when you write this person that said, I hear tones during your presentation, do you remember, if you were at the beginning, I was talking about the ventral vagal aspect of the parasympathetic? The other thing that allows is something called prosody. Prosody, the ability to change our voice and make it really small and quiet and make it really loud. And if you have a baby, you're going to want to be quieter and hello and coos and smile. But if you're trying to get across to your kiddo who's about to put his hand on the burner and hurt themselves, you're going to have to be much different and a very strong, no, don't do that, with connection but direct force from the voice. So part of a healthy nervous system is being able to have these different tones. The worst thing is when you have a lecture with a professor and they are living in a shutdown response. Everybody falls asleep. Whereas if I think about the really good professors I had at university, they knew how to engage the audience. They changed their tone. They made jokes. They looked at people. They read the audience, right? Just like a good comedian would as well. So no subliminal messaging. If I could give you any subliminal messages, just to do the work, to start the work, because our world really, really needs it. The other ways that you guys can start, in addition to the videos here and my free resources, if you don't know about it, I teach monthly classes. We have a class coming up on Saturday. It's going to be a little bit more movement-based, but very gentle. It's not exercise. We have over 2 years of recorded classes on my site, so you can purchase a replay. If anything, go and do one a week if you can. We forget that this work, because it's so new, is like going to an exercise class, right? If someone practices yoga, they don't just do it twice and then that's it and they've got it. Usually they continue to go to a class, whether it's online, at a studio, they put in a tape, they're practicing, just like exercise, you're practicing. This stuff at the beginning requires practice. There does get to a point, however, where you gain enough regulation that you just do go on with your life and do what you need to do. But at the outset, again, going back to that example of learning a second language as an adult, that takes time. So this does take time. All right, I'm going to go to the next one. We're at the top of the hour. So in June, I talked about what it means to be trauma informed. What came away from this, as I was teaching this, is we really just need to be human informed and nervous system informed. I think the word trauma informed is getting just thrown out a little too liberally. And if someone doesn't actually know the various detailed branches of the autonomic nervous system, you're not going to be trauma informed. Trauma informed is more than just we have to create a safe space. We have to X, Y. It is understanding the complexities of the human system and the nervous system. So that was sort of a shift for me when I was teaching that. I'm like, I don't think I even like the term trauma informed anymore. It's like we need to be human informed. Like that part that I was just kind of acting out about my voice changing. Someone who is regulated, who has a newborn baby, does that automatically. It is written in our physiology to know how to listen to these cues. But if we didn't get it when we were young and our parents didn't get it when they were young, and we do nothing to figure this out and learn, we're just going to pass that on to our offspring or the children we might take care of. So to get to this deeper level, it really comes down to, in my opinion, being human informed and understanding what a human needs, what a human requires. We need the same kind of care and safety that animals in the wild get. It should be consistent when we are young. There shouldn't be, in my opinion, any childhood books with different parenting strategies. This kind of parenting, that kind of parenting. We just should be parenting the way animals in the wild do, but then this added piece of higher brain cognition gets added in later. But at the beginning, a little one, up until 3, you just take care of them. You teach them how to listen to their physiology. When they're hungry, you feed them. When they're cold, you warm them up. When they're hot, you cool them down. When they're tired, you help them sleep or you put them to bed. When they're scared, you connect with them. You hold them. When they're being expressive and funny and goofy, you let them do that. These are all very simple tactics for raising human beings. And then this higher brain, when it starts to come on a little bit more, it actually has a foundation, a much better foundation to catapult off of, because those first 3 years of life were so solid, and that human was really just treated like a mammal that is immature, which we essentially are when we are young little humans. Okay, let's see. I'm going to get into let's see a few more notes about that. Yeah, that's all I want to say about June. Again, really recommend watching all of these. I know that might take you guys a little while, but what it means to be trauma informed for me is just being human informed these days. Okay, September. I did a talk on titration. Titration and why it's so important when we're healing trauma. I have alluded to this already, but this is this idea of doing little bits at a time, not overwhelming the system, but still doing something so that it grows capacity. And there's this allure to not titrate because we want to be healed yesterday. Resist the urge to do more than you think you can. Do less than you think you can, and then if you're fine and you integrate and you feel that increased capacity, then the next time do a little bit more, but not so much more that then you're so overwhelmed and your system goes into another survival response. So you have to really pace yourself. Again, slow and steady wins the race. Just going to read this comment. So someone said after that one, this has been one of the most exciting videos you've made because the universe gave me the opportunity 2 days ago to move into a trauma. Full memory, fully connected it. I felt it. I acted it out. I fully moved through, and the after effects, I moved through the after effects of the trauma. It was incredible. My sense is this person probably has gone into some of my work a little deeper or is working with a somatic practitioner. It unfolded over about 6 hours, but I wasn't fully aware of what the actual process was until the next morning after a good night's sleep. This work is so freeing, and not just for me. I do it for my mother, her mother, and whoever else I'm here to do it for. Now, what I think this person is mentioning or meaning is she's not doing the work for her mother or her grandmother. When we change ourselves, we energetically change the lineage. We don't change necessarily the person, but the energetics that are attached to us get shifted, and we cut off those toxic ties. Very important. So such a great comment there. All right. One of the things that I talked about in my video that was released the other week, 7 Habits to Successful Nervous System Regulation. I think it was the 7th one. Don't let small setbacks or any setback set you back. Don't let the setback set you back. Even the pros in the world make mistakes from time to time. I have experienced a practitioner of high level make a very big mistake with me when I was early in this work. But at the time, I didn't have the capacity or this level of following my interoception to know that they were doing too much with me. And so my system got overloaded with way too much activation without knowing it. So this is why learning a little bit for yourself, this is why I created my courses, is so important. Because if you can get that foundation on board, you have more just resilience going into a session, going into a retreat, going into a ceremony, and you can track your needs way better at this nervous system level. All right. In October, I did a lecture on healing sexual trauma, and all on the somatic and nervous system approach to healing sexual trauma. The key thing with working, this is with any trauma, but specifically also with sexual trauma, the body has to come into play. You have to bring the body in. There has to be connection with the body, movement with the body, the pelvis, the spine, the diaphragm, the ribs, the legs of the muscle, the perineum, the groin, the genitals, all of it has to be brought into play again in a titrated way. It cannot be done in one big blowout session. At least I don't think so. So the one comment that was probably one of the more important ones, they were quoting me. And so this person wrote what I said, which was, for those of you here who feel their body didn't do the right thing because you didn't fight and you didn't flee, but you froze, I'm here to say your body did exactly what it was supposed to do. It was protecting you. So this goes back to understanding the polyvagal theory and understanding the nervous system. If we're under a state of threat and we can't fight out of it, we want our body to go into freeze. And I know a lot of people beat themselves up because they feel that they should have done more. They wanted to do more, but they were frozen. That's actually adaptive, because sometimes fighting more will get us hurt more. The key then is working on that freeze later, working on the fear later when you're in a safe environment and you can go through those waves of survival stress. But at the end of the day, working with sexual trauma, again, make sure you watch it, make sure you listen. It's a very important and potent one. The body, that's my notes to myself. Titration, learning the foundations, learning how to get comfortable and capacity to be with anger. Also something called annihilation energy. My husband did a article on that. Seth Lyon, he's my husband and also one of my colleagues. He did a great article on what annihilation energy is. And this, I call it kill energy. Now, this doesn't mean killing people. Be very clear. This means the energy of wanting to harm. We would also call it sometimes sadistic energy, wanting to see someone hurt because they hurt us so badly. This doesn't mean doing it in real life, but building up the capacity, the foundation inside to be able to act that out in the comfort of your own home, maybe with a therapist, maybe just with yourself, with these tools on board to stay connected to the environment, orient, all those things. But to get that energy out, it is very freeing and important work, especially when we were harmed by other people or by a person. All right, I'm going to go back into the comments and I've got one more. Tony says, hey, Irene, I've been doing the 21-day tune-up and it's so interesting. I've been trying to practice every day and implement the orienting. My rheumatoid arthritis has flared. Is that normal? It definitely can be. And so what I would say, your words are, you've been trying to practice every day. I guess the question is do you want to practice every day? It might be that you need to practice every other day or every third day. Maybe you need to lessen a little bit of the intensive, and again, the orienting lesson, for those of you that don't know, it's 8 minutes long. It is not very long, But when we're new to this work and when we haven't connected with the environment in the way that I teach, even 8 minutes is a lot. So what I would suggest is take care of yourself, do what you need to do to help that flare, but then enter into it more as not so much as I have to do this every day, but feel if your body wants to do that lesson that day, or would it be better to just go out for a walk and naturally orient with your own cues? And then the other thing too, just a little tip, and of course, be sure to use the forum because my colleagues are in there answering questions. So use that service, Tony. Sometimes we can feel into these flares, these autoimmune flares, and ask them questions, like ask the flare, what does it have to say? If it had an expression, what would it be? If there was a word to describe the flare, what would it be? You might even, as I say that, it might just pop up. And that's for anyone here. If you have a chronic pain or a symptom, can you go inside? And it might not be needing to shift the symptom, but be with the symptom because it's there for a reason. All right. Okay. Last one, November. We made it to November. I talked about safety. And of course, from a nervous system and somatic perspective, this is a huge topic because it gets into whether or not we ever had safety when we were young, when we were in utero. Did our ancestors, parents have safety? If you're here and you're struggling with stuff, chances are it's not true. It didn't happen. So I'm going to read a comment and then I'm going to wrap up pretty quickly because this comment just hits it home. Because the other thing that I'll say, and I caught someone's comment that said, doing this work, regulating our nervous system, restoring safety, it actually seems harder than learning a second language as an adult. And that might be very accurate for some of us. So I want to acknowledge that. So sometimes this stuff takes time. It can take years to rewire our systems to a place of full regulation and safety. But when we consider how long maybe we've been stuck in this dysregulation, or our family systems have been, even a few years, even a handful of years. It took my husband about 7 years to work to a level of being regulated, not living in fear, wanting to connect with other people. That doesn't mean that along the way there aren't small wins. So this is a comment that I want to read. So this person said, I remember years ago watching these videos and you said it will take time, maybe years, to be able to feel safety. I felt both relieved that there wasn't anything wrong with me and sad that it would be years to feel the rewards I wanted. You also said there are prizes along the way. When you said that, I felt I could stay with this. 6 years later, I watched this video as the person that can feel safety, that has the capacity to enjoy peace, stillness, and joy. I feel genuine happiness every day. I giggle with friends and feel nourished in my friendships. I think that kind of says it all. If I were to say to someone, start my work, it's going to take you 6 years to feel safe, they might think I'm insane. They might think that's too long. But it's not. It really isn't when we understand what we're working on. If you get this now, even if you're in your 60s, it means the rest of your life will not only probably be better, but you'll probably live longer with less illness and less morbidity. So again, this work isn't going to be for everyone, but I do believe that when we get the right stuff in place, when we learn the right stuff, which is exactly what I teach, I'm biased, but I've seen hundreds of students tell me stories just like this, heal all sorts of things. Be sure to check out my sites, read their stories. They're really doing the work. I'm providing the work, but they are doing the work. It's pretty cool. I'm going to end it there, you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging out with me today. If you're, again, like I said, new, welcome. If you've been around for a while, thank you for continuing to show up and listen to me talk. Few things. Saturday, I have my drop-in class of the month. It's on Saturday at 12 p.m. We're going to be doing a little more spine work. You'll need to be able to lie on the ground comfortably. Very small movements, nothing big, but you will want to be able to lie flat on your back and on your side to do this work on Saturday. Not all the classes are like that. Most of them are done seated in a comfortable position. I thought I'd spice it up for December. If you haven't yet started my 21-day nervous system tune-up course, this you can start at any time. You take your time going through it. There's professional help in that course, and that really is like a starter course. And then my big course that we do once a year is called Smart Body, Smart Mind, also dubbed SBSM. We run that once a year. Registration opens mid-February. We start March 1st. We go for 12 weeks. It is really the full enchilada of this work. It brings in the theory, the practice, the somatic experience, the movement. We do Q&As. I do lectures. It is a very comprehensive course. So if you're interested in that, get your name on the wait list, and then we will make sure to let you know when we open up registration. And that's everything. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and commenting. Thank you for everyone listening to this afterwards. And we'll see you in 2022, or maybe we'll see you on Saturday in the Zoom room for class. Bye, everyone, and thank you, Diana, for popping in the links.